Don, you are a volunteer at the Tennessee Museum of Aviation, and I know you love aviation, but I'd like to hear about your background in the Vietnam War. And I guess that's what brought us all together here was that Sky Raider, this helicopter, and you volunteers. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I was born and raised in southwestern Ohio on a little farm. My folks were just middle income, maybe lower middle income. Went to high school, 13 in my graduating class. But I had a little baseball skill, and our local coach got me talking to the local college coach, and I got a baseball scholarship to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. But I had learned to fly when I was a teenager by saving every penny I had. Back then, it was cheap to fly off a little grass strip, two-seat airplane, soloed at about 6 hours. Did some really dumb stuff back then. I should have got myself probably killed then. Buzzed all the farmers, went down, picked up my buddies illegally, took them for rides and stuff like that. Got into college, and my goal was to take Air Force ROTC, graduate as a commissioned second lieutenant, and go to pilot training. Of all the airplanes I looked at in the sky when I was a kid, single engine, single seat, jet fighters was a big thing that I wanted to get into. 4 years of college, off to pilot training. Did T-34s and T-28s down in Bartow Air Force Base in Florida, T-33s in Greenville, Mississippi. Graduated seventh in my class. Back in the 50s and early 60s, the Strategic Air Command was taking almost all the pilots that were graduating. I did not want to go to the Strategic Air Command because they flew big airplanes, but we only got 5 fighter assignments, and so I was seventh in the class. Those fighters went right away. So here I am, and I got a choice of tankers or bombers. And I thought, well, if I get into tankers, maybe I can get into fighters sooner or later. And so I volunteered for KC 135 and then bombers in the 52s or 47. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't even get a 135 assignment. I got a tanker assignment to what was called a KC 97. I hardly knew what it was. It was a 4-engine, piston-driven old airplane. Little Rock Air Force Base was about 70 miles from our graduating class, so I bugged up there one weekend, walked out on the flight line. Here was this great big old airplane leaking oil all over the ramp, and I said to myself, I can't believe this. It's a good thing I didn't have a sharp instrument with me, or I might have ended it right there. But anyway, off to tankers, 97s, great guys that I flew with, but a lousy airplane to fly. I really didn't enjoy it. I kept volunteering for fighters every year. SAC personnel would come back and say, you're a critical crew resource. We need you, which really wasn't true at all. There were co-pilots and aircraft commanders all over the place. But it didn't work. I didn't get out of SAC for a long time. Finally got upgraded to KC 135s. Got an assignment down in Puerto Rico, which if it's going to be in Strategic Air Command, Ramey Air Force Base in Puerto Rico was the place to go. We had 3 years down there, never saw it any hotter than about 82, any colder than about 68 on the beach and all that kind of stuff. We did fly TDY over to Southeast Asia, and the war was going on. The 105s and F-4s were going up north, and we would refuel these guys going pre-strike, and then we would wait for them after they came off their target and do post-strike refueling. And some of those guys that we refueled after their missions, they were pretty well shot up because going up north was bad. They had surface-to-air missiles, they had MiGs, and the most sophisticated AAA that had been known at that time. So they got shot down periodically. But the Air Force had a policy that no pilot would go back to the war until everybody had had a turn at it. So here was my chance finally to get a fighter assignment. I'd been volunteering for F-4s, F-105s, A-1s, O-1s, F-100s, anything. And in 1968, I got an assignment to F-100s, and it would later on go into Vietnam. So in 68, I left Puerto Rico. I did water survival training in Florida, and then went to Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix to go through F-100 training. Great to be back in a single engine airplane and having fun. This was in 1968, and the paperwork and restrictions was not so tough then. And on my dollar ride, which was the first ride in the F-100, my instructor took me down inside the Grand Canyon. If you did that today, you'd lose your wings the next day. But back in the, in '68, you could have some real fun. And so I graduated pretty high in my class in F-100s, and then it was off to Vietnam. My assignment was to the 510th Tactical Fighter Squadron, which was called the Buzzards of Ben Hoa, at Ben Hoa Air Force Base in Vietnam. I arrived there as a guy that had come through multis, and I got into a squadron of guys that had been flying fighters for the rest of all their lives. And so here was a new guy from multis flying with a whole bunch of guys that were really great fighter pilots. I got along with them okay, but you could tell they kind of thought, this guy, he's not going to make it, But I did pretty good. Flew some good missions with them and didn't screw up. So that meant, I was starting to become one of the guys, maybe with an asterisk beside myself. And then one time we were on alert, and alert in Vietnam was where you had two fighters loaded, ready to go, ordnance on board. The pilots lived in a trailer right beside the airplane, and you would scramble to help guys, mostly troops in contact, where the bad guys were attacking the good guys on the ground. And we got airborne and got a hold of the FAC, and he was very excited because he said, I know a hooch underneath some trees down here that I'm sure is a weapons storage place for the Viet Cong. And so we had high drag bombs, and we dropped them one at a time. We're going in, lead would miss, I miss, and the FAC was getting a little bit concerned, are you guys going to get this or not? Finally, I threw a high drag right through the window of the hooch, and the thing went up, got secondary explosions all over. The FAC went crazy, saying, wow, great bomb number 2. I was flying 2 that day. And so that mission earned me a little bit more respect with all these fighter guys. They started saying, hey, maybe this dude can do it. Most of the missions that we flew in Vietnam were troops in contact, where the guys on the ground needed help and needed it bad. I was scrambled off alert on one mission where the bad guys were overrunning some Army troops on the ground, and we got there just in time to start holding them off. We dropped in singles, which meant one bomb, one napalm at a time. We were just about to run out of ordnance. We used all our bullets, our 20 Mike, and we still needed to help them out because they didn't have any other flights yet to help them out. So we dropped our external tanks on the guys' heads to try and keep them down. We ran out of everything, so we just fly over the bad guys and plug in our afterburners, make a lot of racket to keep their head down, and it worked to the point where the guys that were in trouble on the ground got evacuated out by helicopter. This was somewhat typical of our missions in Vietnam because the F-100 just flew down south. It was a little bit long in the tooth. It had been around for a while. It was not sophisticated enough to really send up north where they had all the SAMs and AAAs and MiGs. So the only ground fire we took was light arms fire or some automatic weapons and stuff like that. I did get a few holes in the airplane, but never had any trouble, never had to eject, had some minor things like hydraulic failure for landing and stuff like that. But I was very, very lucky. We did have a couple guys in the squadron that had to punch out, but they got out okay. Another mission that was kind of neat, we got scrambled off alert another time, and here's another forward air controller fact that's pretty excited. And he says, I've got a big sampan that has guns in the front, guns in the middle, and guns in the rear. He's hiding underneath some trees right here on this little river. We had slick bombs, which means we didn't have retardation devices on them, so we had to drop at a higher altitude. And it's tough to hit a small target with a slick bomb dropping from higher altitude. I was flying number 2 again, and we finally located where this boat was, and lead went in, dropped, he missed, I missed, he missed, I missed. Got to the point where I had one bomb left. Lead was out of bombs, and my last bomb got a bullseye and blew this sampan up. By the time I got back to the hooch that night, I'd told the guys that I'd sank a North Vietnamese battleship because it had such a good time. But the missions I flew in Vietnam was very self-satisfying because we were helping the kids out on the ground. They were the ones they were the ones that really had it tough because they were living out there with the snakes and the spiders and the swamps. And they're 18, they're 19, 20 years old. They're just kids. And, the war was not good. We lost 50-some thousand kids over there. And we did everything we could to help them out. That was our mission. And so when you would help them out, you kind of felt good about it. So the missions were good. I enjoyed helping out in Vietnam, and I really enjoyed the F-100. Great airplane. It was probably the last of the, what we would call stick and rudder, seat of the pants type flying. We had basic instruments, round dial instruments. The F-4s and 105s and later on F-16s, F-15s, they were getting sophisticated. But the F-100 was kind of a seat of the pants airplane. It came out in the 50s, was around for a long time, and retiring in about 79 from the National Guard. A lot of guys flew it. We got a great organization. We meet every 2 years, usually in Las Vegas, and have a lot of guys in the group because, when the airplane was around from 52 to 79, people flew it. A lot of guys flew the F-100. I got to tell you a little story. There's one F-100 left that flies. It belongs to a civilian in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's the only one left, and it happens to be a two-seater, one that's used for training. One year, our CEO and this guy met in Oshkosh, and they got together, had dinner, and he said, is there any chance that we can have a reunion in Fort Wayne and possibility of you giving rides to a few guys? And the owner of the airplane says, well, sure, you can have a reunion there. Yeah, I can give rides to 10 guys. So 10 guys could get a ride. There's a couple of thousand in this organization. I happened to be on the internet the day the word went out that we were going to have a reunion in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we we're going to see an F-100 and an F model. The owner was going to give 10 rides. I punched immediately, and I was 7th at that time. And I thought, wow, this is great. I'm going to get to fly it again. Within 30 seconds, all 10 spots were used up. And then there's this whole bunch of guys on the waiting list, hoping the first 10 guys, which I'm one of, hope that we die before so they could get a ride in the F-100. So in May of 2016, I went up to Fort Wayne, Indiana, climbed in the F-100 with my old flying suit, my old helmet, got a ride in the F-100 again 40 years after I last flown my last combat mission. It all came back just like that. Punching in the afterburner, getting the fuel and a kick in the pants, taking off, raising the gear in the flak, pulling out. The pilot let me fly it. Now, he was right there on the other controls just in case I had a little problem. Went up, did some rolls, did some high turns, steep turns. We're not allowed to go supersonic in the United States anymore because, scare some cows and chickens. But we went up to 0.95 Mach, as fast as we could go. Came back, did some passes over the reunion group at the airport. The pilot was good friends with the FAA in the tower, and he did things right over the group, coming in at 450 knots over the all the guys on the ground, punching in the burner and going on up and doing. He did this about 3 times. My wife Kay's down there getting to see me flying in an F-100 for the first time. It was absolutely fantastic to do that, and I was very, very lucky. But overall, when I was a teenager and I was farming, helping my dad farm, I said there's got to be something more in the world to do rather than farm. I was very lucky to get the scholarship to go to college. I don't think my folks could have afforded it. But as I looked at life in about maybe a sophomore, junior year, I got, what can I do? What can I do? And there are 3 things that I really want to do in my life, and that was to fly jets, to play baseball, which I did in college for 4 years, and to race cars. And I've raced Sports Car Club of America all over the United States for about 20 years. So if I expire right after this interview, you can say Don had a really good time because he got to do all those things. And one of the fun things was working here at the museum.